In this movie, I'll show you how to use the transform each command, which allows you to transform multiple selected objects, each around its own independent origin point. So for example, let's say I want to make these guys right here larger. If I were to click in the upper right corner of this layer in order to select all of the flowers, and then select the Scale tool from that Reshape tool flyout menu, and press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac, and then enter a uniform value of 120% and press the Tab key, you can see that in addition to scaling the objects, I also move them farther away from the center of the artwork. And that is part and parcel a function of using the Scale tool inside of Illustrator. It does have the potential to move objects on the artboard. That's obviously not what I want, however, so I'll go ahead and click the Cancel button in order to cancel that operation. And instead, I'll go up to the Object menu, choose Transform, and choose this guy right here, Transform Each, which has a keyboard shortcut of Mash Your Fist D. Not sure if that's really super useful to you or not, but it is based on D for duplicate, even though it does not duplicate objects. That said, I'll go ahead and choose the command, and you'll see that immediately up comes the familiar Transform Effect dialog box. And in fact, the Transform Each command works exactly like the Transform Effect, with the one big exception being that it produces static results as opposed to dynamic ones. All right, so as you can see, both my horizontal and vertical scale values are set to 120%. And I'm scaling with respect to the center of each one of the objects, which is why none of the objects are moving on the screen. After which point, I could click the copy button to create a copy if I want to, but I'm just going to click OK to accept that change. Now, I do have a problem here. You'll notice if I zoom in that I went ahead and scaled every single one of these objects with respect to its own center. And as a result, I've kind of squished things together right here. So this is before and this is after. That's not what I want. So what I need to do in advance is combine all of these guys into either groups, you could do that, or because they all share the same fill and stroke attributes, I could express them as compound paths, which is what I'm going to do by pressing Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to zoom out. And then I'll press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool, and I'll go ahead and marquee this group of shapes, and I'll go up to the Object menu, choose Compound Path, and choose Make. Or I could press Control-8 or Command-8 on the Mac, as I will be doing in the future, because I have to repeat this operation a bunch of times. So I'll go ahead and select these guys, press Control-8 or Command-8 on the Mac. I'll select this group, press Control-8 or Command-8 on the Mac, and then select these guys and press Control-8 or Command-8 on the Mac. All right, now, instead of a bunch of disparate path outlines, we have what Illustrator considers to be 4 paths, one in each corner of the artwork. And so now I'll just go ahead and click in the upper right corner of this flowers layer to select all of them. I'll also press Control-H or Command-H on the Mac to hide my anchor points. And then I'll return to the Object menu, choose Transform, and choose Transform Each. And this time, notice if I set the horizontal and vertical values both to 120%, because the dialog box does remember throughout your session, then I can see that each one of these objects scales independently with respect to its own center. If I want to change that, if I want them to all scale with respect to their bottommost points, then I could select the bottom point in this little reference point matrix and so forth. But in my case, I want everything to stay centered, so I'll go ahead and select that point and then click OK in order to apply that effect. All right, so this is a static effect, meaning if I switch to the outline mode by going to the View menu and choosing Outline, or I could press Control-Y or Command-Y in a Mac, we see that these path outlines have indeed gotten bigger. So this is before and this is after. Compare that to the Transform effect. I'll go ahead and undo Transform Each, and I'll press Control-Y or Command-Y in the Mac to switch back to the preview mode. Bear in mind these objects are still selected, it's just that their anchor points are hidden. And so now I'll go up to the Effect menu, choose Distort and Transform, and choose Transform. And that's going to bring up that very same dialog box that we saw before. The Transform effect doesn't really remember things, so I'm going to have to manually enter 120 into both the horizontal and vertical scale values. But we have the same control over the reference point, and you can turn on the Preview checkbox to see all of the objects grow. And again, they're all growing with respect to their own origin points. So this upper right guy is expanding with respect to his center. The upper left one is growing with respect to her center, as long as we're assigning gender here, and so forth. The one difference inside the dialog box is that we have this copies value, which is not really going to help us very much in this case, but, we could create some weird effect like this if we wanted to. I'm just going to set copies to 0, and then I'll click OK. The other big difference is that this is a dynamic effect. So if I were to zoom in on this guy right here and press Control-Y or Command-Y on the Mac, you can see it grows smaller. This becomes even more obvious if I switch back to the preview mode and press Control-H or Command-H on the Mac, so that we can once again see the anchor points and the segments, which are obviously smaller than the previewed effect on screen. All right, I'll go ahead and press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac in order to zoom out. So the two things to remember about Transform Each: it scales multiple selected objects, each with respect to its own origin point, and it is ultimately a static version of the dynamic transform effect. And that, folks, wraps up my look at the old school but still very powerful world of static transformations here inside Illustrator.